Welcome to Live from My Office, the year-end special. You know, nobody does these. Nobody does a year-end review. Nobody looks back and says, here are the big stories. Here's some thoughts on the big stories. We're the only ones that do it here at Live from My Office. And my guest is my son, who also is the executive producer of Live from My Office and the many hundreds of podcasts we do together. And he joins me now. Ross Cochran, is it Ross?
It is. Thanks for getting it right this time.
Thanks for being here. You know,
I'm happy to be here
every year, and it's a treat for me and a burden for you to go ahead and hang out for a few minutes and talk about what's happening with this show, with this podcast, and what's happening in the world. So why don't we start with podcasting in general?
Sure.
Is it a fad? Is it a trend? Is it going to go away?
You once said, I think on a version of this, there will always be somebody talking behind a microphone. But true. This year, the big podcast news was YouTube became the number one podcast distributor because everyone got video again. And you and I
should say we joined YouTube in full this year. That's probably the main driver.
Mm-hmm.
So if you search Live from My Office,
it's underreported,
YouTube,
but yes.
And you subscribe to the Live from My Office channel, you'll get all of our video.
Correct. Now, you and I both listen to Conan. Conan describes this really well. Conan leaves TV. He's like, man, I just want to be able to just relax. You know, it's everything you hated about the podcast Wave 5 years ago is a bunch of people doing what you did for 40 years as if it was like a side hustle. And Conan happens to be amazing at it. So then they were like, hey, you know, we should maybe maybe bring some cameras in. And then I don't know, maybe you have a band. That'd be cool if we did live in a theater. And the first time he did a live show, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing a late night show again. And there is this TV. Weird mix coming back with podcasts where podcasts are becoming cable news. Like Pat McAfee, got however tens of millions of dollars to do the same thing he was doing as a podcast, and just they threw a TV camera in front of it. So you're the next Pat McAfee, Pops.
We now have our millions for this show come in yet, or are we still waiting?
As generous as the fine folks at Apt Electronics are, you may want to follow up with them about that. Yeah.
And the good people at Woody Buick as well.
Mm-hmm.
Both sponsors for 2026. All right. Podcasting in general, just to go back to a point you made before. I'm still not crazy about the fact that everybody does it, but I'm getting more used to it.
Sure.
What I've come to accept grudgingly in the year and a half since I was last on the radio, and we never had a memorial service for radio. We probably should do that at some point as well.
Oh, wow. Sure.
So, but in the year and a half that I've been off the air, what I've come to accept is there is no more broadcasting.
Sure.
There's no more broadcasting. Broadcasting is gone. We see it in local television ratings. News ratings go down every month. Again and again and again. Viewership goes down because it's so fractionalized. So the idea is you have to be the star of your thing.
Mm-hmm.
And your thing, your narrowcasting thing.
Mm-hmm.
So podcasting is narrowcasting. Narrowcasting is the audience I built up over the years, and the other people that stumble in here drunkenly and decide they're going to stay.
Sure. Yeah.
And I should say, we have a sizable audience, which is nice. It could be more sizable. So please subscribe, rate, review, and tell a friend. Or
but I think what's interesting for someone like you who's had to transition through those different media environments is this is something everyone saw coming that most people avoided. And now you have enough money behind it where this is just now what the industry is. So it doesn't mean it's better, right? But the reason why to make it about
it's the delivery method. This is how content is delivered.
It makes, and that's why, like, when Netflix says TikTok is their competitor, they have a valid argument, even if it's hecka dystopian.
Speaking of TikTok, which makes me think of ADD, which makes me think of you and me, which makes me think of pretty much all of America.
Sure.
Statistically, it amazes me what counts as listening
Oh, sure.
Because for all those years on the radio, you would get credit for what was called a quarter hour. There was a rating service called Arbitron. Arbitron was bought by Nielsen. Nielsen was always a big TV ratings company. Nielsen does TV and radio ratings. Radio ratings now are, hello, anyone?
Right.
Anyone?
Right.
But you'd have to listen for 5 minutes during any given quarter hour to get credit for a quarter hour. And then your quarter hour share would be a big deal because for advertisers, you could go out and their salespeople could legitimately say, we have somebody locked in for, this show for X number of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that would increase your ratings. And the rating success I had was all related to that. Podcast ratings are the Wild West.
Yeah, to a certain extent. So the general digital content is 3 seconds equals a view. But you can also track starts. So what you might see, person who's listening to this, who is what Spotify calls it plays. So when Spotify will, every once in a while, you'll see a number when an episode's come out where Spotify is trying to be like, hey, this is a podcast you listen to a couple times. A lot of people like it. 20,000 people have played it. 75,000 people have played it. All that's saying, dear listener, is that they've literally pressed play. And so that counts for a metric that you can send to an advertiser.
So the visual for that's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Because I even if it's something I'm not interested in, I don't start it. A podcast to me is different than TikTok in that a podcast is an effort.
Sure. You'll TikTok give it more than 3 seconds. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. TikTok's a scroll. So I get TikTok, I'm looking for a second, not for me, and I scroll. A podcast is something I went to. So why would I go to something, click on it, start it, and then bail?
Well, because I think you and the vast majority of rational thinkers in America. Because really, if you really want to nerd out about this kind of stuff, like my generation, like 30 to 50 are the people who have messed this up. If you go younger than 30, you have people who are still consuming content, who are back to consuming content the way that you did. Part of what makes podcasts becoming television so ironic is because it's the exact same thing that happened with video killed the radio star, right?
Yeah, sure.
So you have that demographic that is actually intentionally going to long form content, and because they grew up in it, they're able to go, hey, I just want to scroll, or hey, I want to go and actually listen to something, be educated on something, consume something. My folks, 30 to 50 folks, because we got thrown into the middle of I think the technical term being the shit stew of this.
That is technical.
Yeah. It means that we are the ones who have forced podcast creators to make it about 1 second as opposed to actually making it a destination. So really, what I'm here to say is on behalf of my people pops, I'm the reason why your numbers aren't bigger.
Well, but the numbers are okay. Certainly can't be bigger. Sure. We don't have everyone on the planet yet. But the fact is, the start statistic that you described sounds like a sales created statistic. And believe me, I was around that my entire life.
Yeah. But like, what was the biggest quarter hour share? Sorry to interrupt you. But like, what was the biggest quarter hour share you have? Like, when you think about some of the numbers that you had?
No, I mean, in Charleston, when I was a kid in Charleston, 18 to 34-year-olds, we had 75% of the market.
Right. So 75% of people listening.
Every 4 radios, right. 18 to 34-year-olds were listening to me.
Right. So one of the things, I think this is a really practical thing to bring it back, so it's not just you and I and the dozens of radio nerds out there. It's one really applicable thing that happened is I started teaching at a Christian youth theater. My daughter was taking some classes there. I started teaching a class there. And it's been a great way for me to kind of re-enter the theater world for the first time since college. But one of the wildest things is I'm in a class of 14 to 18-year-olds. And there is no shared reference of what's funny. There's zero, oh, we all saw this thing. So I asked them at some point, after trying a few different things that I thought would work, I was like, pull out your phones and find me the last video that made you laugh. And nobody could. Nobody was able to look back at things they thought were funny. They would open their phones and scroll, and then they would find something, go, oh wait, I've seen this. And they would remember it after the fact. But there was zero staying power. And I think
So
that's,
what does that mean? They have no, whether it's brain wiring or whatever, there's no visceral connection to
because
content
everything's
that will
entertainment.
last.
Because everything's entertainment, right? So like,
But it's also all disposable then.
correct.
I mean, in the big picture, we're all disposable anyway. But what you're describing is it's instantly disposable.
Correct. So you can have, I mean, I've described this to you before, and my guess is everyone listening, regardless of what your internet consumption looks like, you have the thing of, oh, that's that guy that I saw, or, oh, I like that guy, right? But you can't think of who that is. And part of what makes this so challenging is whether it's medical misinformation or pick whatever your dystopian topic of choice is, because everything is disposable, when the algorithm hits you right, and you're all of a sudden actually consuming content and actually paying attention to something, there's zero way to vet the idea of whether or not this person knows what the heck they're talking about or not.
Well, let's talk about how that affects you, because your day job, your real job is significant. Explain to people what you do.
I'm the communications director.
And I'll write it down so I know.
Yeah, there you go. I'm the communications director at Good Shepherd Church in Naperville. So the way that I try to describe it to people at a dinner party is everything that comes from that church outside of what gets said from the pulpit should run by my desk. Whether or not it does is a different conversation.
And you host a podcast and produce a podcast for the church, which goes out to thousands of people. But it is, to me, specifically designed for what podcasting is, or what I've learned podcasting is, and that is you pick your lane and you work your lane.
Yeah, it's much more narrow.
So are you happy with what you're doing?
Oh yeah. I mean, I love getting a chance to do that creative thing in the middle of all the other parts of my job, which are, in my case, get to be pretty creative. But I think to compare it, right, your job was to grow an audience and keep an audience, right? My job is less about growing an audience and more about how do I make sure that everyone who's already here has all the information that they have. And then in the other parts of that I want them to have. And then once they have that, stuff like the podcast is about helping them move from point A to point B and whatever that means to them in their faith walk. So when I think about the work of that, there's more depth there, but there's also way less loyalty there, because that means that the moment someone goes, nah, not really for me, they're out, and they just remember me as another guy behind a microphone, as opposed to you, where we constantly, the number one feedback we get from a podcast listener is, oh yeah, I listened to you from here and I like found you again.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of in a witness protection program until you find me.
Right.
But let's do the plugs then. If you go to cochranshow.com, everything I do is there in some form.
Sure.
You can also follow me on the socials and various things, which reminds me, I need to update the website. And guess what, kids? I learned how.
Oh, there you go.
And what about you? Give people information on how they get to you.
I mean, the best thing that they would be able to do is go through Good Shepherd Naperville. So gshepchurch.org. You can listen to the Encounter Faith podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. But yeah, if you start at gshepchurch.org, that's the best place to find the things that I'm making these days.
And it's modern, contemporary Christian messaging, and I highly recommend it.
Appreciate the endorsement.
So let's go through 2025 for a bit. I was looking for my Survive 2025 hats. I still have a few left and couldn't find any because your mom was nice enough to redo the office. So while I'm recovering from this knee replacement surgery, you can't tell from this vantage point, but I've got a new left knee, or as my grandson, your son, calls it, new knee junior.
Correct, because it's your second replacement.
Yeah, the right side was the other new knee. Thank you, football. So instead, I've got this hat. Now, you go here. That's the Chicago Bears logo in this lighting, which is not great because it's not a normal setup. This is 1920, which is when the Bears first came into the NFL. They're one of the founding franchises. And Chicago, very excited about the fact that as of December 28th, when we're recording this, the Chicago Bears have won their division and are steamrolling into the playoffs. And it is fun. Now, I will tell you, as someone who has been intimately involved with all of the organizations in Chicago, third largest city, Bears are a giant pain in the ass.
Sure.
And it's hard to root for them. I have friends like Dan Hampton through the years and some of the guys from the Bears Super Bowl year. that are more of my generation. But it has nothing to do with the players. They're just a difficult organization to deal with. And I would hope through the goodwill of all of this, maybe that will change, because it's great to see the city excited about the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
Because it ain't happening with the Bulls or the Hawks anytime soon.
Turns out. And Chicago was always a football town. I mean, I remember from some documentary, it was even during Michael's heyday, it was still like sports radio, like like 4 out of every 10 calls were still Bears related. Yeah.
The Bears are the number one thing in town sports was. All right. So 2025, the reason I brought the Survive 2025 hats, because when we did the hats and the shirts early in the spring, it was just kind of a rallying cry.
Sure.
For all of us to get through. For those of you unfamiliar with me, I'm not that big a fan of Donald Trump.
Sure.
If you followed me on Substack, do any of that reading, or are familiar with my work at all, you're probably familiar with it. Maybe you're one of the folks that have fired me in the past. Then you would obviously know. So surviving 2025 is a big damn deal, because now you get into 2026.
Sure.
Politics goes into the re-election mode in overdrive, including some presidential candidates starting to go to Iowa for no apparent reason, and New Hampshire for no apparent reason, and hang out and eat corn and talk about how much they love cows.
One of the dumbest communications things that still exists in politics is politician going to Iowa and everyone going, "Hey, are you here because you want to be president?" Like, and the amount of like trying to play coy.
Oh my God. Nope. Just felt like going to Iowa.
Right. Like, people in Iowa don't say that. Like, what are you doing?
Right. So, my sermon, it all comes down to turnout. And as a preview for 2026, a lot of Live from my office is going to be about turnout.
Sure.
And about being involved, because it makes me crazy, as you know, because you have to hear more of it than most.
I hear all the unedited versions.
Yes. If people showed up to vote for the primaries, you would completely make useless the Trump threats of primarying another candidate. For those people that don't understand, if you're running for office and you're anti-Donald Trump, and I'm Trump, I could say I'm going to primary you, and I will run a candidate against you, endorse that candidate, and if I'm popular enough, that candidate will win, you will lose your job.
Yep.
A lot of the House of Representatives has already changed. Republicans getting out because they can't win the fight. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who got hit in the head by a bowling ball and suddenly came to her senses and is now a nice human being. Good for her. Welcome to the party.
I have an ADHD cul-de-sac about Marjorie Taylor Greene for when you're ready.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
If we want to do that now, one of the hardest you ever made my friends laugh when I was a kid, like core memory for me as a comedy person, was you were doing drunk impressions of Disney characters, as one does.
Oh, what a good dad.
And we're 9, 10, 45 in, and we yell out Goofy the character, and you played it completely straight, which was just a high quality joke, right? So every character is drunk. Goofy sounds completely normal.
Right.
That's what happened to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Does seem so, doesn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the thing is, with the primary system such that it is that we have, you have infinite resources where you can look this stuff up. So when the primaries come up, the great mistake the media makes in this country now is not how they cover things, it's what they choose to cover.
Sure.
In 2028, let's do the math, is 2 years away. Mm-hmm. 2026 is 2 days away, 3 days.
Sure.
So 2026 should be the focus. And we should be hammering on people to go vote in your primaries. Because if you really believe Congress is getting it done, the echo from having your head shoved up your own ass must be really deafening.
Yes.
Because Congress is a massive failure. And this ain't a Democrat or Republican thing, because the Democrats have been playing games forever as well. Cheating, gerrymandering, all those things, they're all bad. And a guy named Mike Madigan is in jail. He was the last party boss and ran politics in the state of Illinois forever. And he finally got caught, and he is in jail as a nearly 80-year-old man. Maybe he is 80. I don't remember. Handsome devil, though. And Madigan also cheating the system and a lifetime Democrat. So people think I'm a Democrat because I bitch about Trump. I have never been more down the middle in my life. If you suck as a politician, you need to go. And that's going to be the continued sermon of 2026. So, do you have optimism as a young father that we have suffered the worst of it and it could get better now?
Ooh. Not really. I think those are two separate questions. Optimism versus it could get better now, right? Because I think for all the things we started talking about as far as like attention economy is concerned, right? Like, one thing politics comms folks figured out before the rest of us was it was no longer became about getting people's attention. You actually had to fight for people's attention. So we all have an uncle on Facebook who says the craziest things possible. And that uncle on Facebook also has the most attention on Facebook relative to your other uncles, right? And that same principle applies to anyone on any sort of digital platform. So to use the most like concrete example, right? Like who's going to run in 2028 for is JD Vance the successor? Is it Vance and Rubio? Like, what does that look like? With all those folks, you have a massive vacuum that Trump has created of charisma with people. And you have policies and ideologies that those less charismatic folks tend to believe in more. Trump was this empty vessel for so many people where they could kind of put their belief system on him because he didn't really believe in much of anything other than attention. And now you have folks who, want to overthrow governments. So we're going to go bomb other countries, which I think was a thing we tried once and it didn't go super well.
No, never has.
And I say once we as a country, we've tried that a lot and it hasn't gone super well. Yeah. And I think that is really terrifying to go down that rabbit hole of, JD Vance believes a lot of things that Donald Trump has said, but you wouldn't, you get enough truth serum in him. He would tell you he doesn't remember what his things was that he said.
No. And the majority of the Senate, the greatest failure is the Senate, and the majority of the United States Senate, the Republicans, they don't believe him either. Because I have many people I speak with in Congress on a regular basis. They all tell me the same thing. But if they tell me something negative about Trump and they're Republican, they will never say it on the record.
Right.
Again, because they're afraid of losing their job, or in some cases, because of the threat of violence, they're afraid of that.
Right. Which, I mean, I think one of the things that makes, to go back to the optimistic versus pessimistic question, you have a generation of kids who, when it comes to things like social media, they are choosing to do better than we did. They are choosing to pay attention. They are choosing to, if you ever get confused by what's an AI video or not, show it to the nearest 12-year-old in your life. Odds are that 12-year-old's going to be able to tell you if it's real or not, right?
Yep.
There is a better angels argument you can make. The reason I can be pessimistic, though, is because when I look at things like politics or the church, I go, it hasn't caught up. John Stewart's line, which I really like, is like democracy is an analog system and we're in a digital world. And that doesn't mean you get rid of democracy, but it means that you have to have people in power and in place who can lean into that digital world with our most consequential things. And the most consequential things being, potholes in the street in front of me to, national security issues. So hard to be optimistic, but then the other side, to end on a more optimistic note, is hard to be pessimistic when you look at my kids, because my kids are nothing but optimism.
Yeah. And I totally agree. When I look at your kids and my grandkids, I feel the same way. They are my sole source of optimism, which is great. Is there anything else from 2025 we need to go over?
How are you feeling? How's your knee doing?
Well, the new knee is going to be great. As a matter of fact, last night and into today, it's probably the best in the 6 weeks since the surgery. And the Winter Games are coming up, and I do that thing where I ski and shoot. I actually just fall down and shoot.
There you go.
So I'm looking forward to that. No, listen.
I'm trying to decide what's more ridiculous, you on skis or you firing a rifle.
Actually, you forget something. When I was in the FBI Academy, Citizens Academy,
sure,
I was a sharpshooter extraordinaire. Mm-hmm. And in the simulator, I banged all the bad guys, killed them, wiped them out. Well, our friend Andrea Darlis killed a lamp and a sofa.
Sure.
So I was called sure shot and one shot.
Mm-hmm.
So I can shoot. Skiing? Nah, not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, continuing on. Um, Christmas time and the holidays, we're lucky that we're able to spend time together. We're blessed that you guys live so close. And we got to have a lot of family time together again, which is nice. But I have a list of questions that I found, which I thought were interesting. They were questions you should ask your adult son
Okay.
or daughter,
Sure.
but they're sort of designed for your adult son. And one of them, because I wasn't going to jump to this quite yet, but in the interest of time, because I know you've got other shows.
Yeah. Yeah. Do me a favor. Get to my book plug quickly.
Is there something, you're 35 years old now, is there something that you have discovered as an adult that growing up you had no idea would be this big a pain in the ass?
Ooh.
You know, the point where you go, wow, being a grown up, I don't know.
Sure. Yes, is for sure the answer. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is home ownership. So we moved this year and had a wonderful townhouse, and now we live in a single family home. And I've had those moments, younger folks I think would identify with this as well, of like, you're like looking around for an adult here, and then you realize like, oh wait, no, that's me. Right. Like, our sink was, started leaking because that's what sinks do. And having a moment of like, oh, right, that's me now. Like coming out of that renter mentality.
And because I'm your father, you don't come to this new home with a set of skills to fix your sink.
Correct. Yeah. That's not even where I'm going with it. I'm just more going of like, people talk about home ownership of like, it's this like home ownership is a forced savings account because the amount of money you're putting into your home, I think you wind up netting out pretty quickly here, but, whether it's, you have a moment of you have a problem and all of a sudden you're $1,000 lighter.
You know what it was? $1,000?
That and a couple of other home related activities. Yeah. And a dog related activity. So.
Yeah. Because the thing is, and God bless plumbers, because who wants the job?
Sure.
But the thing is, when you call a plumber, their money is made when they answer the phone.
Sure.
Because unless they turn down the job, you're already paying them,
mm-hmm.
and they haven't even been to your house yet. But thank God for them because they're getting it done. But yeah, being an adult, the homeowner thing, I 100% makes total sense.
Yeah. And I think it's influenced by, you and mom like fought really, really hard to keep Amy and I in one house from the time I was 3. So like we weren't people who moved. It was not, so that's part of why it was novel. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I think we've talked about this a bunch to frame around politics. Like I remember us having a realization of how you and I grew up with different Americas, right? You grew up in the shadow of the Greatest Generation. You grew up with this sense of America can do anything. And I grew up in a post 9/11 world, in a invading Iraq world, in a Great Recession world,
financial collapse world.
So it just naturally creates some distance in how you and I view what the country's capable of, as one very specific example. And I think how your generation predominantly parented, there was a lot of kind of almost the same kind of like, no, we can figure this out. We can do this. And then folks my age are going like, oh shoot, I don't know how, in a lot of different areas of life.
So it's a hard lesson to learn, but you do learn that, it's your house, you got to fix it.
Yeah. And I think, but like, there's also like great fun examples too. Like, the fun version of that, right, is like, you learn very quickly that, oh, if I work through something, like the sense of accomplishment you get from it is also pretty rewarding on the other side of it.
100%. All right. These are random questions again, found on what I like to call the internet.
Sure.
What's your favorite memory of a time that you and I had together when you were a kid?
Ooh. That is a, that's a hard one. I think one of the things, because you and I had a good relationship, is the things that stand out are very seasonal, right? Like it's easy for me to remember random tidbits of things because that's how my brain works. So one thing that I thought about recently is we're coming into New Year's Eve, and I remember, I don't think it was your first New Year's Eve show, but it was the first one I went to. And you like gave us a shout out, and it was like one of the first times where I was able to I stood up and I milked the applause real hard. And that then being able to look and see my kids have that version of that within church. That's one very specific thing. Yeah. Everybody, when your dad's hosting a New Year's Eve comedy show, we've all had that experience. It's very #relatable.
Well, how about being on stage together? I mean, that was a thrill for me.
Yeah. I think one of the cool things, about growing up in your household was even though we played it out in very silly contexts, like New Year's Eve shows, one of the things that really ingrained in me was there's a responsibility to the people in front of you, and you got to take care of the people in front of you. And you ascribe to, I heard Seinfeld describe this once, of comedians complaining about cancel culture are misunderstanding the point of what a comedian's job is. Because your job is not to hold some sort of objective truth about what's funny. Your job is to find the laugh in the people in front of you. And that looks different if you're playing a Tuesday morning Bible study or, playing a nightclub.
Yeah, it's funny because if you mentioned Seinfeld, I agree with part of his take on comedians. You're not supposed to learn anything when you go to a show.
That's a good line.
You're supposed to be entertained. And he's a billionaire because he did a show that was about nothing.
Right.
But having said that, I do think comedians can move the needle.
Sure.
And I think in this new world of everybody distrusting everything in entertainment, or I should say news, that comedians in who tell the truth, I think, are important. George Carlin, back in my growing up period, was an example of that. Even though Carlin really didn't find his voice until the 80s. Richard Pryor, the best of all time. But best ever, the GOAT.
I think you're right, but I also think one of the things that I appreciate about Seinfeld's take on it is there's also an element of know your role, right? Where Kimmel, there's a point of this very not funny topic, but there's a thing that happens now where when there's a shooting at a school, one of the universal experiences that happens is every late night talk show or any sort of other tragedy has a moment of trying to respond to it in their monologue slot. And to your point, they can create change. They can grab attention. They can do things that news can't. But to use Kimmel as an example, it is weird to have the guy who used to host the Man Show be in this position of having to help lead people morally.
Yeah, and Letterman called him the other day, so you're the voice of the resistance now. You're the leader.
Correct. And that's the thing where I go there's part of the reason why I think folks got turned off so much by some late night comedy was because there wasn't enough of speaking truth to power the way that Carlin did, right? It was so contextualized around one very specific, threat to the Republic that created too much ways for people to sort of check out from the conversation.
Yep. 100%.
Which is not those comedians' fault. It's the fault of the system that the comedians are operating in.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also, I put it on it's the fault of the audience too. I mean, the audience has to give a shit enough to be involved, to understand the give and take that's going on between the entertainer and you and the information that's coming your way. All right, let me fire through a few more of these before we run out of time because we got Matt Damon waiting in the back. Mm-hmm. Vacations. Favorite vacation we took as a family? And I think I know what your answer is going to be.
Hawaii was pretty great. Hawaii, one of my favorite stories from Hawaii was you did a bit, which was That Almost Happened, which was a great radio bit. Right. And Hawaii gave me my version of That Almost Happened, which there's a show on MTV called Made, and deeply problematic show if you look back at it now. But we were approached by some people in Hawaii because they wanted to have me be like a plot point in this girl's episode, and had a conversation. It was completely like nonchalant. It was something I was like, yeah, sure, that'd be cool. Right. We didn't think about it.
And this is before you had chosen a path to possibly be an actor, right, or a performer, right, or, certainly the church life.
And they took your number and then they never called you. And because it's the MTV show Made, it might be one of my favorite examples of That Almost Happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is entertaining. The other thing that was great about Hawaii was just laughing, laughing like just nonstop. But
that's so to go to like the childhood thing. One of the things that I don't think I realized enough of until I was an adult with my adult friends' families, or Lauren's family, my wife Lauren's family, was the ways in which we were the funny house, right? Yeah. Like there was good food house, there was cool toys house, but like the number one characteristic, the unique characteristic of our house was just how much we laughed.
Yeah. And you would have fun. If you're a kid, you came over, you would leave and you'd tell people you had fun. Mm-hmm. What advice did I give you as a kid that stuck or was just plain wrong?
I honestly, I don't think those two things have to be necessarily mutually exclusive. Yeah. But I would say a very simple one of you're not on someone's agenda until you're on their agenda was the thing that you loved to remind me and my sister of all the time. And I wind up using it a lot now in communication, where I have this moment of like, how do people not know the thing that I've said over and over and over again? And then I'll go like, son of a bitch, I'm not on their agenda yet. Right? Like there's that moment of going, you hear the thing your parents preached that you were convinced that they were wrong about, or you roll their eyes about, or whatever. And you see the truth that plays out in it over and over again.
Is there a separate one though that jumps out as, yeah, that was bullshit?
Oh, jumps out is hard because you part of what made your perspectives unique, where you kind of had to, you were constantly having to sort of litmus test your takes, right? Like,
well, it's interesting. That's great. So here's what I was going to say to you is you have this physical manifestation where if I'm talking to you and you're not connecting, you literally look like you're dozing off.
Sure.
Where you get heavy eyelids, right?
Sure.
So
can't imagine where I got the heavy eyelids from there, Pops.
Yeah, well, there you go, right? I've been awake for the entire show. But to me, my problem is, and you could certainly correct me, is the setups were too long before I got to the stuff that really mattered. Because most of the stuff I eventually told you mattered.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a funny way of looking at it. Yeah, I mean, I play a game with Abigail, which is When Did I Lose You? Right? Which is a game that I won't be able to play with Isaac because it'll hit different with him. But like, she's a 10-year-old girl, so I lose her pretty quickly. And it does help for me to go like, okay, there's everything after this point. I'm just saying for me. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying like, I'm aware that this is an audience of 0 now.
But see, that's one of the coolest things because I felt like we gave you an opportunity and your sister as well to say anything you wanted to us.
Sure.
And I see that with your kids. As a matter of fact, with Abigail, who's now 10, it was in the last year or so, you were telling her something that was very relevant. And she just flat out admitted she was bored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not something you walk away offended by.
No.
You know, you're thankful that she's that honest. You correct whatever she needs to hear. So it's pretty cool as a parent and a grandparent to have that tie.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. There's a couple more. Is it harder for kids today than it was for you when you were a kid?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going way back to the 90s.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to use the kids I teach.
What do you say?
To use the kids I teach as an example, kids are exposed to everything being perfect, like kids are able to intellectually understand that like this is through a filter or this is partial perspective or this is out of context or whatever. But the ability to have your worst moment be immediately shared with everyone. Excuse me. And the threat and anxiety that comes from that is a real thing. So kids are aware of their own imperfections sooner. And then I think it's becoming less of a thing now, but like post phones, particularly exploding, you have books like Ancient Generation that prove this. My brother and sister-in-law are in their early 20s, or their mid 20s, I should say. And their childhood was so different than my wife and I, just from an 8-year difference, because of how much the world changed from like 2007 to 2015. And that's my dog, for those of you who could hear that. But
could have been your stomach, but I get it.
Yeah. But I think what they experienced was also a dramatic sense of, here's all this information that before was easier to compartmentalize. And now you're just flooded with stuff where like, I don't know how to prioritize all the stuff I know. It's great that you have so many people who are up in arms about the genocide in Gaza. But part of the challenge of those who are actually trying to change that are you have so many people who, because that information is so prevalent, they believe by just consuming the information, they've done something. And therefore you have the same kind of having to move the needle problem for any kid today that I didn't have to deal with because it was the 90s and communication still made a little bit more sense.
Movement is change, and vote and advocating for change is what you need to do. And you don't do that with a post, or you don't do that with yeah, I'm mad too. All right, last two questions. Is there a lie you told me as a kid you want to finally come clean on?
Oh, that's a great question.
You're going to hold it till next year?
I'll hold it till next year. Yeah. I don't remember.
I don't think you lied much as a kid. I know
lying
you lied,
much. Because I think it was, I've described it beforehand, which was, we'll decide if this joke is going to make the podcast or not. I've described it beforehand as like the way you and mom parented me particularly was like, hey, here's where these like goal lines are. Stay within the field. Right. So, I remember, so having that level of freedom just meant that, there wasn't a lot that was like out of bounds, and therefore there wasn't a lot I would have had to lie about.
But I think the charm that you used to bullshit your way through the last 2 years of high school,
sure,
and probably some of college, which, of course, I would be lying if I said I didn't do the same thing.
Right. But
that charm has served you well as an adult, because now dealing with your public, your church folks, you can be that guy that makes everybody feel better about whatever their point of view is.
Oh, sure.
And solves problems and puts out fires. All right. So next year at this time, when people tune in, the lie that you thought of, you'll tell us.
Okay. Yeah. Stay tuned.
Right,
it's a year-long tease.
What's the one thing I could do and you could do to make our relationship better, if any? This is good now because we're helping fathers and sons everywhere.
Yeah. All fathers and sons should have to do podcasts together. I think that's an important rule for everyone.
Sure.
I'll use this example. It's an example I use with mom. I think one of the challenges of having a really good and intertwined relationship like you and I is you wind up having to deal with people just having inconsistencies. So the way I've described it to mom in context is you guys are incredibly generous and incredibly filled with grace with us and how we live our lives, Lauren and I. But there will definitely be times in the morning when I get a lot of grace, and in the evening where I don't get as much grace. And because we're so interconnected, I'm seeing all of that and you're seeing all of my response to that. Right. So I think having a sense of, assuming positive intent and what's the most charitable story you can tell. I remember once you were saying, I think you're doing fine. I think you're just tired. Right. Those types of realizations and saying those things out loud are all really helpful.
Right. And in my case, learning to not assume a negative if you don't return a text.
Right.
And in your case, not assuming a negative if I do anything that's not necessarily what you hoped it would be, or if I got to the point quicker. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Anything in conclusion of this year in review?
This one wasn't as funny as the ones you did on stage for all those years.
Yeah, I didn't have time to put the slides together.
Yeah, that would probably be the main takeaway for those who listen to this. But no, I think I can be optimistic about 2026 in a way that I can't be about 2046. Is probably a good way to say it. So,
yep, hard to look forward too far.
Let's continue surviving and beginning to set up a more equitable system so that everyone can thrive in 2026. It's going to be a longer t-shirt is really what I'm saying.
Like, the bottom line is all of our problems are fixable.
Mm-hmm.
And though I was not a great fan of Bill Clinton, he was one of the smartest people to ever sit in the White House. And he had a speech written by someone that still, a chunk from it still remains true today. And that is, all that's wrong with America can be fixed by everything that's right with America. And that's not blind patriotism. That, in fact, is a fact. But we got to work together, and we've got to understand the system is broken. And the way to fix a broken system is to not ignore it, but to get your hands dirty and get involved. So Substack.com, Steve Cochran, follow me. Social media, cochranshow.com. And please check out young Ross Cochran's podcast as well, you Christians, and those of you who are considering believing. And where do they find it?
And Counterfeit Podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts.
And your website in general is? gshepchurch.org. gshepchurch.org. Ross Cochran, we are 500 plus shows deep now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's live from my office, available everywhere and on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope you'll listen, watch, subscribe.
If you're still listening at this point and you're not subscribed to all the places, I don't really know what you're doing. So you should definitely go subscribe. Yeah.
That's a good point. See, that time the setup wasn't as long as the end. The end was too long. Yeah.
Goodbye.
Nice job. Nice job catching it. Thank you, buddy.
Love it, Pops.
Love you.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.